Hello and welcome to Workshop 5. This week we're departing a little bit from the text. The text is still important. It's not a very long chapter and it has some important things in there, but there's not a lot to really discuss arising from it. So it's an opportunity to take some of the themes out of that and to push them a little further, particularly what we're talking about this week in the readings is revocation and alteration of wills, and the most common time when that happens, apart from someone willingly saying I'm making a new will, is on marriage. Marriage revokes a will. I don't know how many people know that. I'm a stranger to the world of wedding planning and weddings, and I'm not sure whether, I'm presuming and I'm hoping people get reminded several times along the way, by the way, your will no longer be valid, you need to create a new one. I hope it happens. We can talk about that in the workshop actually. It'd be interesting to see how many people know that occurs. Anyway, and it's probably one of those things that I'm sure a lot of people with all the best intentions in the world think, no, they should do, but do they actually do it? Particularly when they're wrapped up in their joyous celebration of new life, they probably don't want to be thinking about death. And as lawyers, of course, telling people to think about death is part of our job. Okay, so the technical stuff in the law this week, it's really kind of contract law. You'll see the same principles pop up in terms of revoking, changing wills, putting in co-source to wills. We need to know the language, you need to go through it, but it's not rocket science this week. So what we're going to talk about in tutorials is actually the idea of family a little bit. We'll return to this again when we look at intestacy, but at the moment I want to go back a couple of weeks to look at some of the material from previous chapters on undue influence and think about what we mean when we say family. So what happens when someone leaves a surprise gift in a will to someone who is not within the conventional definitions of family? We see this a little bit with people who are carers, who look after elderly people, and they receive a gift when the family aren't looking after them, and then the family might claim that carer has used undue influence to try and extract money out of a weak and vulnerable person. So read back in chapter, this will throw me, remembering which chapter it was that we talked about undue influence. It was in Mental Elements, actually. It was in chapter 3. Have another look back at that material and have a look at what we're talking about in terms of when we think about the will as providing for family. Who is that family? Who's included? And what do we have to start looking out for in terms of some of those issues? I'm also thinking here in terms of things like family violence and where our professional responsibilities sit in relation to that. In the past, joint wills were quite common. I'm not sure how common they are now, but we did end up in situations where particularly women may not be making free wills, because if there's a situation of violence, they may be creating a will in a way that they're being directed by their husbands. Now, is that a problem for the law? That's a question. Most of what we look at in undue influence is about strangers coming into the family. But what about some of those complex situations where you've got mixed families and you have one partner, and domestic violence is usually directed at women, but let's just say one partner is through fear being told to create a will in a certain way that's not an exercise of free will. So as I said, this week's a little different to the text, because the text is pretty straightforward, it's pretty short. So let's use this as an opportunity to start opening up some of those issues and start thinking about, well, when we talk about family, succession and property, we are often talking about one point of view. Now, what about, and this will tie into your assignment too, what about other cultures? What about different beliefs? What about different ways of handling things? Can we just rely on one model, on one idea? Okay, so I hope that will be an interesting